Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here. Our theme for this month is inspired by the heat waves. Whew, they keep coming and going and coming. We're through this one, and then it comes back. And I think today's going to be the hottest. It should cool down a little bit, and then it's going to warm up again next week. But that's our summer, right? So we're talking this month about how we're keeping our cool during the heat wave. And we said that our response to the physical heat could be a powerful metaphor for how we handle life when life heats up. Each week this month, we're exploring different ways we can keep our spiritual cool when the heat is on. Continuing our work that we started last week, today's theme is time to simmer down. Who heard that as a kid? Okay, now just simmer down, simmer down. And we will take an open and honest look at how we heat up with that emotional response called anger by exploring questions like, what is it really about? Is it ever productive? And most importantly, what can you do with yours? Here's a little heads up. The answers to these questions may not be exactly what you expected. But before we look at these questions, let's back up a bit. Last week, we looked at the shadow side of life, which is the lowercase l, life, otherwise known as the relative. Does everybody remember that? Who was here last week? Okay. And we also looked at the uppercase L, life, which is what? That's the absolute. And we said that in the absolute, there's absolutely no shadow, because we've all heard about the shadow side, the shadow self, right? There's only oneness in the absolute. There's only light. And in our human experience, we experience the false appearance, the illusion of the two-ness. So it's an illusion. There really is only all one. And that two-ness, though, can look like the shadow. It can look like the shadow. So everybody got that? Clear on that? Remember that? All right. So I shared that Robert Bly, in his book, A Little Book on the Human Shadow, suggested that we are each born into a 360-degree personality. And please catch the spiritual significance of that. 360 degrees is what? It's the perfect circle, right? It's a perfect circle. And a perfect circle symbolizes wholeness, which is where our exploration last Sunday ended up. So Ernest Holmes tells us in his book, It's Up to You, spiritually, we are the offspring, if we wish to put it that way, the manifestation or emanation of a universal wholeness. This universal wholeness is in us in a very true sense of the term, because as the originating principle of life, we have God, or universal spirit, out of which anything and everything was made. Therefore, everyone is truly born of God. If this is true, then we are primarily and fundamentally perfect, no matter what we have done to ourselves. And I'll add, what others may have done to us as well. Bly said as infants, we express the full breadth of our human nature, all 360 degrees of our wholeness without editing or censoring. But as we grow up, we learn that certain slices of that 360-degree pie are unacceptable to the people around us. Maybe we were shamed for crying or punished for being angry. Maybe we were ridiculed for wanting attention or acting proud of ourselves. That was not accepted in my home. You couldn't brag about an accomplishment or something, because that was not good. So I learned early that was not something that you should do. So we learned to repress those slices of our pie, the ones that got us hurt. According to Bly, it was said if we threw these unacceptable qualities over our shoulder into a bag, it was as if we threw these unacceptable qualities over our shoulder into a bag, which we've been dragging around us ever since. The challenge is we don't come to wholeness around them if we don't come to wholeness around them through acceptance and love, and that was our work last week, they don't stay in the bag. They won't stay in the bag if we don't deal with them. They tend to seep out, and they tend to overshadow us. And this happens in relatively small ways, like being cross with our partners. I can be naggy sometimes and picky and not very nice sometimes. Or it can be devastating. It can show itself in devastating ways, like some of the things that have happened in our cultures, in our countries, the shootings or bombings or Recently, the acid attacks, things like that. Those are senseless attacks, and they're seeping out. They can do that. And we shake our heads and feel impotent to be of any help when things like that happen in our world. Or we get angry. We get very, very angry at how inhumane humanity can be. But we can do something about it. We can do something about it. And that something begins right here, inside of ourselves. Just as the reading that Thelma read. That's why what God is doing, God sent us, right? And that's what I want us to do more of today. As we look at this emotion that many of us have stuffed in the bag that we carry on our shoulders called anger. So let's turn to our questions. There are many theories and psychological perspectives on the topic of anger. And what I offer you this morning is sort of my take on this. And it doesn't have to be yours, but what I hope that today's dialogue will do is cause you to think, to really, really think about all of these questions and come to your own clarity about them. So here's my take on this first question. What is anger really all about? What is anger really all about? To answer the question, imagine this. Imagine that you are hungry. You're very, very hungry. You have $5 to your name and you have a $5 bill lying on your kitchen counter to go to the store to buy a loaf of bread. Or if you're gluten intolerant, something else, right? All right. You go into the bedroom to put on your shoes, and while you're there, someone sneaks into your house and steals that $5. Oh my. I would suspect you'd be very, very angry. Really, really angry. Because you don't have any other money. This is the only way you're going to get fed. And you might run after that thief. You might call the police outraged, and understandably so. But let's take a look at it this way. Let's say this time you are still very, very hungry. You have your $5 bill lying on your kitchen counter to go to the store to buy your loaf of bread. You go into your bedroom to put on your shoes, and while you're there, someone sneaks into your house and steals your $5 bill. But this time you have $5 million tucked away in your house. So the question is, how angry are you now? How angry are you now? Maybe not so much. In fact, you might have some compassion for the poor person who took that $5 bill. You might think that he or she is pretty desperate, right? To steal a measly $5. You wish you would have known. You would have given them so much more. So nothing changed about what happened. The thing that made you so angry in the first situation is the thing in the second situation, but your reaction is completely different. And why is this? Why is your reaction different? Because in the first scenario, you had very little of what you needed very badly. In the second, you had lots and lots and lots of it. So, this is a parable that I got from a book called Real Love by Greg Bauer. We actually heard him. I don't know, were you at a Silomar when he was there, Greg Bauer? No, you don't remember. Okay. He came to Silomar one year. And this parable is not about money, because parables are never about what's on the surface, right? Rather, it's about love. It's about love. The one thing we all need to have lots and lots and lots of. And when we feel sufficient love, true, real, unconditional love, our anger response is dialed way, way, way down. When we're in love, when we're happy, when we're elevated, our anger response, where is it? It's down here. It's not right here. Remember, we always either come from love or we come from fear. Love or fear. So Greg writes in his book, we need to remember that our anger is actually a reaction to the feelings of helplessness and fear that result from a lifetime of struggling to survive without unconditional love. So I want to tell you a true story about what real unconditional love looks like and about what happens in the presence of it. A famous research scientist who has made several very important medical breakthroughs was being interviewed by a newspaper reporter who asked him why he thought he was able to achieve so much more than the average person. In other words, what set him apart? He responded that it all came from a lesson that his mother had taught him when he was 2 years old. And I wish I had been this kind of mom, truly. He'd been trying to take a bottle of milk out of the refrigerator. Imagine a 2-year-old trying to do this. When he lost his grip and he spilled the entire contents on the kitchen floor. His mother, instead of being angry with him or punishing him for doing something he certainly had no business doing, said, "What a wonderful mess you've made! I've rarely seen such a huge puddle of milk." "Well, the damage is already done. Would you like to get down and play in the milk before we clean it up?" Indeed, he did, and after a few minutes, his mother continued, "You know, whenever you make a mess like this, eventually you have to clean it up. So how would you like to do that? We could use a towel or a sponge or a mop. Which would you prefer?" And after they finished cleaning up the milk, she said, "What we have here is a failed experiment in how to carry a big bottle of milk with two tiny little hands. Let's go out in the backyard, fill the bottle with water, and see how you can discover a way to carry it without dropping it." Wow. And that is exactly what they did. Because of a mother's unconditional love and refusal to get angry when he made a mistake, the little boy grew up to believe in himself, to realize that it was okay to make mistakes and to make major contributions to the world. Wow. Wish I'd read this before I became a mom. Seriously. Okay, so I just tapped on this and I don't know what I did. Okay. So many of us did not get that kind of unconditional love when we were growing up. In fact, the fact is probably most of us didn't. But here's an idea for you. Up until you were about 14, you can blame your parents for your hurt and your upset and your anger. But after that, it's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to open yourself to love, to be authentic and genuine so that you can let it in when it's offered to you, to cultivate and nurture a relationship with divine love. Holmes writes in The Science of Mind, "Without love, nothing can be accomplished. With love, all things are possible." And when we love, our prayers are answered and the gift of heaven is made. The gift of heaven is life and not death, love and not hate, peace and not confusion. And we enter into this paradise through the gateway of love toward one another and toward God. Love is greater than all else and covers a multitude of mistakes. Love overcomes everything and neutralizes all that is unlike itself. Love is God. So these things are our responsibilities. And these things are the things that will dial down, they'll dial way, way down the anger response. And because we live in a world where we may not always be able to feel 100% unconditionally loved 100% of the time, we may still get angry. I know I do. So the next question is anger ever productive? Is anger ever productive? Well, the answer to that question is no and yes, depending on what we do with it. As I've said before, I told this story once before, Jesus got angry. Jesus not only got mad at the money changers in the temple, which perhaps affected positive change, but the next morning he zapped a fig tree because it wasn't bearing fruit, even though it wasn't the season for fruit. Okay, perhaps not positive change, at least for that tree. It is not productive when it manifests itself in the way a study when it manifests itself in the way the study released a year or so ago by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. The study revealed that nearly 80% of drivers express significant anger, aggression, or road rage behind the wheel at least once in the past year. In addition, approximately 8 million U.S. drivers have engaged in extreme examples of road rage, including purposely ramming another vehicle or getting out of the car to confront another driver. The study also found that events precipitating violent incidents are often remarkably trivial, and the people involved are often just ordinary citizens. Wow. One of the authors of the study said people have been shot because they drove too slowly or played the radio too loud, but violent traffic disputes are rarely the result of a single incident. Rather, they seem to be the result of personal attitudes and the accumulation of stress in the motorist's life. I'll add a lack of real love. Just being angry will never solve the issue that's making you angry. But the physical cues of anger alert you that something needs to be done, and the way you express your anger could lead to solving your problem. For you, you may not get angry when cars fly through a nearby intersection without stopping. Or you may get angry. when they do that. Excuse me. I was thinking, wait a minute, I would be angry. How many of you have seen that? It's like, they just went through a red light. Oh my gosh. That happens often. You want them to be more aware of the children that walk and ride their bikes there. You could honk and flag down the offending cars and give them a piece of your mind, but sitting, at the offending crosswalk, stewing over fast cars and waving your arms is not the most effective ways to deal with your anger. What might be effective, though, is working with the local police department to acquire better signage or a traffic light in a dangerous spot. I've noticed that Oakdale now has flashing lights that, they light up, and boy, you're really aware of it because they've had some people get hit in their crosswalks. This is an example of how getting angry can create positive change in society. Larger examples of this include the civil rights movement and the women's suffrage movement. Holmes said, let's be a people, this is important, let's be a people who are for something and not against anything. Wow. Let's be a people who are for something and not against anything. So if your anger or frustration at something causes you to take action for something, then yes, that anger was very, very, very productive. Finally, and most importantly, what can you do with your anger? Well, we know what we don't want to do with it. We don't want to hold on to it. Science of Mind says, Ernest Holmes says in The Science of Mind, when our minds are filled with thoughts of anger, hatred, and resentment, we are pouring into our body poisons in the making, and Joy will concur with that. Too much of this disturbs the upbuilding of body tissues, but degenerative thoughts can be turned into creative, energizing, vitalizing ones. Anger can be turned into love, and the very power that has been destroying can be made to build up. And I suspect your brain just said, that's all well and good. But how? How do I turn it around? It's a habit inside of me. I don't even realize I'm doing it. I just automatically switch into it, and then I get so angry with myself, so I add fuel to the fire. I just don't know how to stop it. I'm going to share with you. I'm going to throw out two wild ideas. One is to realize that what you need in the moment is love, the real deal. So get loved by expressing your anger to someone who can love you right in the middle of it, who is not the person you are angry with. Not the person you are angry with. Just a heads up there. Because here's the deal about that. A great deal of damage is done to relationships when we express our anger at the person that we're angry with. Do we ever really feel better? Is the relationship made better? Do we feel closer to the person? Do they feel warm and, cozy, all those warm, fuzzy feelings about us when we yell at them in anger? I can tell you from personal experience, no. No, it doesn't work that way. But expressing your anger to someone else who can love you right in the middle of it is very, very helpful and powerful and healing. The other one is to surrender it to the divine. Surrender it to Spirit. Admitting that you may not know how to release your anger, but that you want to. You could disentangle from it, right? You could even in that moment have a little conversation with God. It could go something like this. God, I do not know how to get rid of this on my own. I've had it for years, but I know that you can help me change and transmute it. I know that you will give me what I need. God will give you exactly what you need in the moment if you will just accept the help, if you will believe that God knows what you need. You may be sitting there thinking about the anger you've had in the past. We've all had times of anger. And now you choose to get rid of it. I ask you this morning to trust God or Spirit enough in your life to give it up permanently and to just let it go. When we turn to God for help in the moment, it comes, but we forget, because when we're in that moment, it's difficult sometimes to remember that we're not alone. We are promised by the great teacher, the great master teacher Jesus, who said, "And everything that you will ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive." Anger will be transmuted inside you. Transmutation means that it's like putting a log onto the fire. God uses it as fuel and energy for new good purposes. So first of all, realize that God is a God of love who will continually produce good in your life if you will allow it. We're the ones who have to. God never moves away from us. We move away from God. God always says yes. Charles Fillmore in the Talks on Truth said, "The love of God must be felt in the heart. It cannot be described, and one who has not felt it can have no concept of it from the descriptions of others. But the more we talk about love, the stronger it grows in the consciousness, and if we persist in thinking loving thoughts and speaking loving words, we are sure to bring into our experience the feeling of that great love that is beyond description, the very love of God. So let us turn right now to the very love of God and feel it in our hearts. Remembering that when we choose to persist in thinking loving thoughts, regardless of the circumstances, we are actively bringing the experience of great love into our lives. Let's choose that right here and right now. And so it is.